Minnesota Vikings backup center Chris Reed has taken a pay cut to stay with the Minnesota Vikings. Chris Reed, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts, now on the Minnesota Fighting Vikings, has taken a pay cut to stay with Minnesota, as I said earlier, like 2 seconds ago. Let's see. Oh, misspelled Vikings. Got it. Okay. Chris Reed, a very, very good blocker. Pretty stable, pretty strong. Is pretty big and stout. You know, he has experience with being in Minnesota. He was actually teammates with Adam Thielen, I believe, in college, Mankato State University Community College. Nailed it. That's right. Let's see. Chris Reed. His background: 30 years young, 6'5", 300 pounds. He played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Dolphins, and the Colts of Indianapolis. Education was at Central High School. He wears number 62 for the Vikings. He doesn't seem fit to be a starting center for the team, though, because in the cold game, very, very cold Week 17 game against the Green Bay Packers, when the Vikings lost that game 41-17, unfortunately, Chris Reed had to step in for Austin Schlottman because he had an injury. Austin Schlottman had an injury and couldn't even put any pressure on his foot. It was an ankle injury that he had. Chris Reed had to step in for him. And when Kirk Cousins, he was back there clapping his hands like, I need to hike the ball. Come on, hike the ball, hike the ball, hike the ball. He was going crazy back there. Chris Reed didn't even know. He wasn't paying attention to the communications. He was acting like a young center. And he looked better for the Colts. So I was wondering, you know, what does the pay cut mean? Well, I mean, I know what the pay cut means, but if he's going to stay with the Vikings a lot longer, what use could the Vikings be having for him? You know, that's a huge question. So got to do some digging. I did some digging, did some research. Chris Reed for the Colts, he's actually a really good player. You know, when you observe him, he's actually a really, really good player. A good guy too, has experience in living in the great state of Minnesota, and he's just a guy that you want to have in terms of personality. Definitely in terms of personality, he is that guy. Part of his communication issues could have been because, you know, it was cold. It was cold outside in Green Bay at the time. The crowds were really loud, so it's kind of hard. So it's really difficult to communicate in cold weather with fans screaming in your ear. So we it's pretty obvious to know that. And Chris Reed, I could not be more happy that he had a chance to reunite with wide receiver Adam Thielen until Thielen got released, which is still, which is still very painful. But there was still a question about Chris Reed starting over Garrett Bradbury in Week 1 against the Green Bay Packers last year. But no, we saw Garrett Bradbury as a starter against Kenny Clark. That was a pretty good matchup to see. I'm glad that the Vikings went out there and got Chris Reed. He had a good relationship with Adam Thielen. I'm glad he got to spend some time with him. Chris Reed, I feel like he deserves this pay cut despite his slight inconsistency with his center work and communication. But he had a pretty good training camp. He was lined up as a starter a few times, working with the ones, working with the first team. He was getting first team reps. So that was looking pretty good on that spot. But taking a pay cut, that's a little much. Okay, that's a little much, but we'll see what happens next. But hey, your thoughts on our thoughts. Minnesota Vikings backup center, Chris Reed takes a pay cut to stay with Minnesota. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on our thoughts. Until next time, thanks for watching. Skol Vikings. We'll see what happens next.